I will let you guys, before I get into that quote, preface what drew you to Comet Lovejoy and why you decided to name the band that.
Well, it started as, I mean, I think all bands kind of struggle to find a good name first off. So I think that's some useful context. And we had been searching for a while. And I just remember trying to like approach coming up with a name from some sort of, how am I trying to say this? Yeah, the way that I was trying to come up with the name was that, okay, like, let me find something that I like and something that's interesting and try to, I was really searching a lot of different routes for inspiration of where the name could come from. And I remember just sort of sitting on the couch and I was with Connor, our keyboard player, and like the notion of naming the band after a comet sort of came up. And I really like comets because it's a natural thing, but it's also somewhat mystical. And it's something that's really sort of rare and a special thing if you ever catch a glimpse of one. And so I thought, as a starting place, hey, that's really cool. So I started Googling comets, and there's quite a few notable comets out there, like Halley's Comet and Comet McNaught. And then Comet Lovejoy popped up, and it's this really interesting comet, it turns out, that has a pretty fascinating story where it was on course to sort of collide with the sun, and a lot of astronomers were looking at it and they were thinking, oh, is this comet going to crash into the sun? Like, we don't know. And it ends up surviving and in glorious fashion comes out of the other end of its orbit and is glowing this brilliant green color and is spewing alcohol and sugar into the atmosphere. And there's some really great quotes from NASA about the comet. And so I thought it's I really like sort of trying to personify the comet and thinking of it as this like really daring figure that was just kind of going for it and risked it all. But I think the Lovejoy element of it is sort of representative of just sort of this playful nature, and like, we're doing this because we love it. And yeah,
I think it's a lot more about just, being kind of a rogue type. It's like a rogue type energy, but then it is kind of funny because one of the quotes from NASA, I think, was boozy space rock.
Yeah.
Because it was letting off like, what was it, like 350 bottles of wine per second worth of alcohol?
Yeah, I have the quote right here from NASA.com, which sounds pretty reputable. It's a pretty reputable company. So they say
I've heard of them.
Yeah. They've done some things. So they say, quote, Comet Lovejoy lived up to its name by releasing large amounts of alcohol as well as a type of sugar into space. According to new observations by an international team, the discovery marks the first time that ethyl alcohol, the same type in alcoholic beverages, has been observed in a comet. We found that Comet Lovejoy was releasing as much alcohol in at least 500 bottles of wine every second during its peak activity. And goes on to talk about the boozy space rock, which is also another name for a future band, boozy space rock. But yeah, I thought when I read that definition, I was like, okay, that's pretty cool, because you have the ethereal nature of a comet, kind of something that you see and you know it exists, but you will never be able to come close to, at least not in our lifetimes. And you also have the way that it's special, the boozy aspect, and that, that comes into the creative aspect as much as you allow it. The drinking, the not drinking, I feel like that is just a cool fact about that asteroid or that comet that kind of makes me think about the creativity of being in a band.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it kind of plays into a little bit of a rock and roll persona. And I mean, while we're kind of beyond our prime partying years, I think we all kind of had a little bit of that in us in our high school and college selves that, just like to have fun and Of course, that certainly involves some substances at times. But I mean, really, by the time that we were forming the band, like it actually, it's not really a part of our songwriting process at all to really be like using substances. And so while it's kind of this cool element of the Comet, I think we want to be kind of cautious of playing into that too much, because it's not really like what we're about. I think we're all for people having a great time and partying, but we definitely don't want to be that cliche of like the rock band that's
I think the coolest part about Comet Lovejoy is that it was nearly like collide with the sun and would have vaporized, and and I feel like that very much accurately represents what it's like to be an artist or doing something that's not extremely like expected of you or straight laced, because you always feel that sense of danger and risk, and but Comet Lovejoy avoided the destruction and continued going on, and is going to get into trouble later on in the future. That's kind of how Ryan and I feel sometimes. We're like, some days we're like, oh my God, we're like, it's a high and low type of thing being an artist. You have some good days where you feel like you're on top of the world, and other days where you're like,
Yeah, I think just the attitude of just like going for it though, and kind of looking at approaching music as a career. It is this sort of high risk, high reward situation. So I think part of the story that I liked of the Comet was that it went for it and it survived. And I do think there's a certain element of kind of like the metaphor of sort of sailing toward the sun and trying to reach, whether that be, success or fame or, lots of money. It's all part of the sort of the cliche of of pursuing sort of a successful music career. And it's kind of, you can't have one without the other. Like you can't be a really successful artist without kind of dealing with some of that, not so nice stuff of, kind of having a public life.